A very pleasant morning to one and all present. We welcome you to the 24th episode of Yaniki Tech Talk, and joining us today is Mr. Chaitanya Kulkarni, Business Development Manager at Lithium Balance and Sensata Technologies. He is responsible for the battery management system product growth in India for automotive, industrial, and ESS applications. Sentinel Technology is one of the world's leading suppliers of sensing, electrical protection, control, and power management solutions with operations and business centers in 12 countries. Mrs. Chaitanya has over 16 years of industry experience and has worked in various companies like Mahindra and Mahindra, Eton, Cummins, KPIT before he joined Sensera Technologies. With years of experience, I think he would be the best person to enlighten us on today's topic, battery management system, and throw us some light on various aspects of battery management system technology in India. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of the participants and Team Ganiki.
Yeah, thank you, Ganiki and Shekhar for this opportunity. So, Varsini, just to add, I was part of device electronics before, so I've been working with Shekhar from almost 8 years. Yeah, 8+ years, right? And other thing, just to let everyone know that I'm a mechanical engineer by education. So I'm still trying to learn electronics. So if there are any questions which I may not be able to answer, just pardon me, I'll get back to you with answer from the right people. Okay, let me try to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we start?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, yeah, great. So let's first of all understand what we are going to talk about today. So I mean, there's a battery management system and there's a battery monitoring system. So battery management system, basically, which is responsible for all the battery pack level, what is internal to the battery pack, while monitoring is something external to the battery pack. Obviously, both of them are responsible for improving the safety of lithium ion batteries, but our current focus will be battery management system, what is going inside the battery pack. Okay. So, I mean, I know it is going to be a little basic, but we need to really look at, do we really need a BMS, right? So technically, if you ask me, can cell absorb the capacity, absorb the charge and discharge the charge? Technically, it's absolutely yes. But can it handle that operation safely? Answer is no. Can it ensure that cell meets its life? Probably not. So from the safety is the safety and the longevity of the battery. These two things drive the requirement of BMS. Okay. So obviously there are other functions which we'll discuss later, but primary function for which this requirement came for a battery management system is from safety and the longevity. So what happens if we are not able to handle battery pack safely? So you must have seen some failures of I mean battery getting fire and then completely destroying the vehicle. There are some fatalities been seen, right? Apart from that, last year you might have seen this event in or this basically thing in Delhi, which happened to one lithium-ion battery pack supplier, wherein there was some issue with the charging of the cell, which is not connected to the BMS, and the whole factory got, I mean, got under fire, right? So there are severe consequences of breach of safety, and that is the first and foremost thing what battery management system will look for. Okay, so what does exactly BMS do, right? It ensures that all the parameters related to the voltage, current and safety, temperature of the battery pack are within minimum and maximum permissible range by the cell manufacturers. Okay, so these range or these values of voltage, let's say in case of LFP, The nominal voltage is 3.6, but maximum voltage is 4.2 and minimum could be 2.8 or 2.9, right? So it is a duty of battery management system to ensure that battery operates only between these two ranges. Okay, if you remove BMS, there's a good chance that the cell may keep on adding energy to it and it may go beyond 4.2 and it will just result into failure. Okay, or on the contrary, if it may continue to discharge continuously, it may go below 2.9 volt and it may go into deep discharge, so it cannot be revived, right? Similarly, for temperature, the absolute capacity of the cell varies based on the temperature, right? So it can be optimally function by anything between 20 to 25 degrees C, but when it goes to above 25, below 25, there is significant change or let's say deterioration in the performance. So that need to be factored. And third is current, wherein how much current can be drawn instantaneously, what was the peak which was drawn, what was the average which was drawn. So everything need to be looked at. And as I mentioned before, the cell parameters or cell capacities vary based on the temperature. So current also need to be modulated based on the temperature at which the battery is operating or the environment is. Okay, so this is the first and foremost operation of any BMS. Okay. If you have any question in between, feel free to. I'm not sure if Shekhar and the team can modulate that, but you can ask me.
We can take questions, and they can put in the questions in the chat box.
Okay.
And we'll take them up.
Okay, sure. Now, what are the basic functionalities, right? So if I had to categorize into different buckets, right? First is measurement. So these are everything beyond ensuring that the BMS operates cell into safe operating zone. So it is basically responsible for measurement. So pack voltage measurement, current measurement, cell voltage measurement. It could be cell voltage or module voltage. Okay. The temperature measurement may vary based on the location at which the temperature is actually higher, right? So we may have single point measurement or multi-point measurement, right? So measurement is the first part of any BMS. Now the second part is control, right? At what point battery should be connected or disconnected, the decision. So the first part here is, can BMS take a decision of connection or disconnection? Okay. Now the second part is, can BMS initiate action to connect or disconnect? So there's a slight difference between need and action. In need, we basically decide, or let's say BMS decide whether battery pack should be connected or disconnected. Or in the second phase, the BMS takes an action. Okay. Now this action may vary based on whether the BMS has PDU integrated or PDU is external, right? If the BMS has PDU integrated, most likely the set of MOSFETs will be on the BMS itself. So those will be actuated, or with the help of IOs available on the BMS, the contactors or etc. will be actuated. The other thing which is required in the control is, let's say, measurement, which we missed. So for the current measurement, we will require a current measurement sensor, right? Which is most of the time external to the BMS. If the PDU is integrated, it will be within the BMS. So the current measurement can be done with shunt or Hall effect sensor or CAN-based sensor. Okay, every current sensor has their own pros and cons, and the selection will be based on the overall system architecture, end application, and what is the sensor manufacturer, its parameter, etc. Okay. Coming back to the control side, we discuss about MOSFETs, we discuss about DC contactor, right? So there is no clear demarcation at what point MOSFET will be preferred and what point DC contactor will be preferred, but it is a generic trend is at low current application, we can go with MOSFET. So typically what we do is anything beyond 200 ampere, we recommend DC contactor, and anything less than 200 amps is MOSFETs. Okay. Now the third function is balancing. So BMS need to ensure that all cells are at same capacity at any point of time. Now this balancing can happen at charging while the BMS is at rest, right? Idle condition, what we call. And there are different ways in which we can do the balancing. Now the fourth thing, which is performance, right? Here we basically look at how do we estimate the capacity, right? So as you are all aware, state of charge or state of fail, or we can call it the SOX, right? There is something called state of power as well. So all these put together, there is no particular, let's say, physical parameter which can be directly related to the SOC number, right? So these are all estimation, and there are a lot of models which are built, and based on that it is to be predicted. So state of charge is a capacity of battery pack, let's say available capacity of the battery compared to the total capacity at any point of time. Okay, if the pack is fresh, then 70% of charge is basically 70% SOC. While SOH, state of health, is the capacity of the battery pack at any point of time to the fresh capacity. Okay, so SOC may be 100% at any point of time, but over the time SOH will keep on degrading. Okay, so estimating these capacities is extremely essential, because you can assume that, let's say, after 2 years of operation, the SOH has dropped to 60%. So we're effectively looking at 60% of the capacity, right? So at 60% of the capacity, the amount of current which is drawn by the BMS, or which is given to BMS, or which is taken from the given to the battery or taken from the battery, will be changing, right? So that need to be factored. So this is something BMS need to do. Okay, so this is what we call it as a optimizing battery life and energy availability. So for example, BMS, when the battery is at 100% capacity, it can certainly give more energy, right? So let's say if the battery capacity is 10H, we can certainly draw 10H when it is a 100% SOC. But if the capacity goes down, there has to be change in the current which is drawn from the battery pack. Or let's say the battery is at 30 degrees C, we can certainly discharge at nominal capacity. But if the battery pack operates at 50 degrees C, the environment or because of any other reason, right, there has to be derate of the capacity, or the capacity need to be reduced, right, available capacity. So that need to be factored by the BMS. So what BMS will ensure that at different conditions, the amount of current drawn or received by the battery is modulated, right? So there are different ways in which we can do. Okay, so in lithium balance BMS, we have a dynamic allocation of current. Some BMS might have a graph on which, based on the SOC, how much current is allowed, or based on the temperature, how much current can be allowed, it can be programmed. Okay. Now the last is other functions, but when it goes to application, these are equally important. Okay, so diagnostic, can BMS find out where is the error, and can it report the error, right? Which standard, whether it's a UDS or any other standard which is followed, what is the implementation of UDS, right? So everything put together, diagnostic will be important. When it comes to real life application, this is, I would say, more important or equally important compared to performance, because let's say battery pack goes into the field, right? And if we do not know where is the issue, it is impossible for anyone to, I mean, understand and resolve that issue. So diagnostic is equally important. Data storage. So typically for on-road vehicle or automotive or two-wheeler application, two-wheeler, three-wheeler, right? This concept called freeze frame, right? So what it does is if there is an issue, the BMS will basically ensure that the data while the error is observed is recorded, right? So which is available for technician to see where is the issue and what was the data set during that issue. So they can tackle the issue very effectively. And last but not the least, the communication, right? So BMS is not going to work in isolation. It need to work in tandem with either motor controller or vehicle controller or any other controller, right? So it need to communicate. So automotive, obviously, it works on CAN, but when it goes to non-automotive application, it could be RS485, RS232, right? So this is extremely essential that BMS is able to communicate, right? Otherwise, I mean, no matter what we do in measurement, control, balancing, performance, we are not going to know what's happening inside, right? And reporting. Obviously, BMS need to broadcast data over CAN or any other media so that user is able to see what's happening, right? So communication nowadays, it can happen over Bluetooth as well through mobile app. So there are different ways, right? Okay. Okay. I guess we discuss about battery protection. So let's quickly look at a 12-volt system, which has 6 number of cells, right? The average is 12-volt here, but look at 2 cells. One is at 3.2 and one is at 1.6, right? So obviously when the system will put into operation 1.3 and 1.6, these 2 cells will be discharged very fast compared to other. Okay, so now what BMS need to do is ensure that all the cells are at same voltages. Okay. The complexity you can imagine for an example. So if it's a 48 volt 2 kilowatt hour battery pack and it's a LFP, let's say. So we are looking at technically 15S20P, so 300 number of cells. Okay. So what BMS need to do? BMS need to ensure that these 15 series are balanced uh, at same voltage, okay, or same capacity. Okay, just to add here for any BMS, right? So what BMS will split battery pack into, this 15S20P will be split into 1S20P. So for BMS, 1S20P will be a cell or module. Okay, and 15 such will be put into series to achieve 48 volt. Okay, so let me just explain again. For any BMS, out of this 15S20P, 1S20P will be a cell or module. Okay, so it will ensure that 1S20P is at a same level like that of others. And 1S20P, 15 such modules will be put into series to achieve 15S or 48 volt. Okay, so if you have any question, we can take up at the end of this session as well. Okay, so the other function is balancing. So obviously this is much more self-explanatory, right? If the cell is at lower capacity, so it need to stop discharging, or let's say ensure that instead of charge going to this cell, it should go to this cell. So either it can move, which happens in active balancing, or it will basically start discharging to the point where this cell gets charged, and then all three will go to the same point. Okay, there are different algorithms coming into charging. So most of the commercially available BMS manufacturers are using passive balancing. There are some with active, but active comes with a lot of complexity, which we'll discuss in next slide. Okay. Yeah, so this is important slide. So if I plot the battery capacity versus the functionality, right? So this is what it will look like. So for a cell phone, the battery capacity is lowest, and what we need is a least functionality. Maybe a passenger car, which is much more complex and I would say much more demanding, because for let's say energy storage application, the fluctuation in the demand from the end is very minimal compared to automotive application or passenger car application, because we tend to accelerate, decelerate fast. Second is it need to operate in much more harsh environment. The environment in case of energy storage can be very easily controlled. So it could be temperature, humidity, or the vibration, which are extremely different in case of passenger car. Other thing is there are a lot of electronics involved in the passenger car. So there are multiple controllers with which BMS need to interact, right? And obviously there are new standard, new requirement like functional safety, etc., which we'll discuss also. So this also puts a lot of emphasis or demand on BMS. So normally, I'm extremely cautious using word normally, because uh, some BMS manufacturer might start from energy storage and they stick to that. But what majority of the BMS manufacturers are doing is, if they develop anything for passenger car, right, with some feature reduction or with some changes in the operating methodology, it can be supplied to maybe two-wheeler, industrial equipment or energy storage. While in this zone, we are more okay with the analog BMS, while in this zone, we will require a digital BMS. Okay, so just to give an example, now functional safety is much more in, I mean, every manufacturer want their product to be functional safety compliant, right? While if you may say that the two-wheeler application and the passenger car application might be at running at the same condition, but they also follow different functional safety requirement. So what is for automotive or let's say passenger car may not be similar for the two-wheeler application. So in a nutshell, if you have a BMS which is exactly meeting passenger car requirement, then more or less it can be used for other all other applications, right? Right, we discuss about types of BMS. So analog and then digital are, let's say, first and foremost difference. Now the other thing is, let's say distributed and non-distributed. So for 48 volt, the battery pack capacity, it could be at max 10 kilowatt hour or maybe 10 to 12, right? Not beyond that. So at that capacity, the size of the cell or size of the battery pack is relatively smaller. Okay, so the distance between the cell and BMS is always less than, or most of the time less than 1 meter or something like that. Okay, what it helps is if the distance between the point at which the voltage is measured and at which it is reported, right? If that exceeds beyond certain limit, let's say 1 meter, there's a loss of signal. Okay, while when the board to board communication happens on RS485 or RS232 or CAN, there is no loss of signal. Okay, so when the battery pack become of a bigger size, let's say 300 volt and 30 kilowatt hour, it is typically seen that it is split into 2 to 3 parts, right? And each part will have part of the BMS. So it's not an independent BMS, but it is a part of the BMS. And there is a supervisor who is basically coordinating between all the boards which are connected to the each module. This is one scenario. In the second scenario, where we are seeing which is more prominent in India is multi-pack configuration. So for example, in case of let's say three-wheeler, we tend to use two battery packs of 3 kilowatt hour capacity, right? So here each pack is different. Okay, each pack is completely independent. So there is no supervisory controller. So in that case, two BMS need to work with each other and ensure that it provides necessary, let's say, energy to the vehicle. Okay, so this is between distributed, non-distributed. Off the shelf and custom, in this case, basically, uh, high volume customers tend to build something which will exactly meet their requirement. Let's say a large manufacturer who is looking at 1 million vehicle to be built, right? So for them, is hardware costs will be recurring, right? So they will ensure that not even a register which is unwanted should go on the BMS. Secondly, they will have their own methodology in which they want to configure the BMS, handle the BMS, diagnostic communication. So that will require changes in the software. So that in a nutshell is a custom BMS, right? And off-the-shelf BMS is standard available and which is ready for the uses. So obviously, off the shelf at some point of time, each customer need to have some compromise on, let's say, if we have 15 SBMS and the customer is using 14S because it's an NMC battery pack. So if that's a off the shelf, then they are basically saying that, okay, we will not use that 1S which is available on the board. While somebody who want to build a million vehicle or million battery packs, they will be ready to get it removed so that they get benefit over 1 million units. Okay, so most of the cases, it is the business case which drive decision between custom and off-the-shelf case. Okay, so it's not the technical decision, but it's more of a custom decision. Yeah. So I know we already see most of us are aware about the analog BMS. So basically it's a protection control module or protector. So, so it can do balancing, it can do current protection, but it doesn't know what, where and how much, right? So we don't know what's happening. I mean, if it starts functioning, we can basically remove this and put a new one. We cannot program it, right? While in case of digital, much more data is available. We tend to do a lot of evaluation reporting, and whatever we build at Lithium Balance, these are all digital PMS. So we don't work into analog PMS. So we discuss about topology. So centralized, distributed, and master follower, right? So centralized is, let's say, 48-volt application. There are 15 cell and every cell is connected to the BMS. Okay. While in case there are parallel packs, so each BMS is independent, each pack is independent. So all controllers are talking to each other, or let's say BMS are talking to each other. So this is a modular. Okay. This is mostly seen in three-wheeler application or energy storage application. Okay. Distributed is there are boards which are connected to the cell and there's a BMS controller. So these boards are typically used in cell which are of high capacity, like 100 Ah or 200 Ah capacity. So they tend to have a BMS boards on each cell. Okay, but when we have a multi-pack configuration, right? So if the pack is split into 3 to 4 parts, master follower is the best option. Okay, wherein each follower board is connected to the setup cell and then it reports to master, and then master basically directs it to follower board when to stop, when to start, etc. Okay, so let's say on high level, these top two are suitable for low voltage application, while the two on the bottom are suitable for high voltage. Okay, this is my suggestion, but there could be BMS which is single board and used for 100-volt application as well. So I'm not denying that. So this is just my thought how it can be split. So typical modes of operation. So I'm saying operation in, or let's say a mode in which you will see BMS majority of the time. So there could be start mode, there could be error mode, but even that can be clubbed somewhere here as well. Okay. So idle mode is there is no charging and discharging. So BMS is targeted at lowest power consumption because BMS is drawing power from the battery, right? So it need to ensure that it is drawing least power from the cell or the power source. It could be stock battery or it could be cell itself. Okay. And second is it need to ensure that cells are monitored continuously, if required balance continuously during idle mode. Okay. In case of charge mode, it is basically responsible for managing incoming charge to the cell or pack, and it need to interact with the charger to modulate the voltage and current at which charger is working. Okay. So it could be onboard charger, it could be off-board charger or anything. In case of discharge mode, it need to be managing charge out of the cell and pack. And while doing that, it need to communicate with other controllers. So it could, for a passenger car application, it could be a single motor controller or multiple motor controllers, a vehicle controller or any other controller. Okay. So basically, while the battery is in different modes of operation, BMS need to ensure that all cells are within prescribed band and no safety incidents. During idle, it's not basically charging or discharging, so it will not cut off, but it will report, right? In case of charge mode, let's say if charger starts sending more current than what BMS or the battery can actually take in, it will need to cut off, or it need to instruct charger saying that now it's time to reduce the current or voltage. Similarly, during discharge, if the motor control is drawing more power than what a battery can deliver, okay, then it need to instruct, or let's say instruct the PDU or instruct the motor controller that now it's time to go to the lower capacity and start operating at this zone. Okay. The other thing is SOC estimation. So SOC, as we said, it's basically a ratio of current charge remaining in the battery and maximum charge capacity. Okay, so this is, let's say, at any point of time, the battery can have SOC which is 100%, because what we are looking at is the total capacity of the battery pack at that instance to the charge capacity, while SOH is the capacity of the battery pack available at any point of time to the fresh capacity. Okay, so over the time, SOH will go on reducing, while SOH based on the charge capacity, it may between 0 to 100%. Okay, most of the manufacturers will try to ensure that though on the cluster we see battery pack between 0 to 100, but then they tend to chop off the higher capacity and lower capacity. So BMS may be allowing battery pack to operate between 90% to 10%, but this 10% is 0% for the user and 90% is 100% for the user. So this is done to ensure that battery pack doesn't go into extreme zone and it protects. Obviously, there is an impact on the capacity, but this is done to ensure that we get expected life. Okay, you might see there is revive mode in case of some vehicles, right? So in case of revive mode, they might be utilizing this 10% capacity, because most of the manufacturers during revive mode mention that the capacity available from the battery pack in revive mode is only for 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers or some X capacity. So basically they are looking at capacity which is lower end of the battery pack, and to ensure that it doesn't happen time. So there is always a um, uh, limit beyond which we cannot go into revive mode, because it might push battery pack into the deep discharge mode. Okay. Now, how do we estimate SOC? So two methods which are most widely used are open circuit voltage, right? Based on the open circuit voltage of battery pack and the cell data from the cell manufacturer, then we can estimate. Okay, but this is little challenging primarily because in case, let's say in case of LFP, the curve is much more flatter, and getting many data points to see where is this pack exactly, it is extremely difficult. In case of Coulomb counting, charge going in and out of the battery pack is basically measured to arrive at the limit. But the charge coming in and out of battery pack, it depends upon the temperature, right? So how do we factor that, right? So now with advances, there are different methodologies which are being looked at. But before that, let us look at if we are to estimate the SOC or if the BMS had to,
Chaitanya,
yeah,
yeah, it would
hello,
be good if we can time for another 5 minutes to wrap up,
yeah,
so you can
yeah, sure,
concentrate
sure.
on the
I
right
think
points.
absolutely sure. So in case of if you have to estimate the SOC, right? So these are the some of the factor which need to be looked at, right? So if the PCB component accuracy, which is measuring voltage, current, etc., if the accuracy itself is poor, then obviously our estimation is going on wrong. Instrumentation accuracy, what is the sampling rate, what is the drift, what is the noise, all this put together will also impact cell model, right? How many data points we are putting for OCV, right? Can we factor aging of the cell? So all this put together will impact the SOC estimation. Okay. So now there are advanced models. So what we essentially look at is, can we combine OCV and Coulomb counting? So combining OCV Coulomb counting, maybe at some point of time we will consider SOC from OCV side only, and in some cases Coulomb counting only. So error up to 30%. This is our internal assessment, but more than 30% error can be reduced if we use only Coulomb counting. Okay. Kalman filter impedance spectroscopy is being also looked at to as an advanced model to do this. So we already discussed about cell balancing. Now the newer element, which is functional safety. So what it does is it need to basically detect the failure. Uh, it need to also report the failure, and it need to diagnose and try to see if we can have some sort of systemic design to ensure that that will not impact. So functional safety typically will go through different phases from which will go through HARA or validation, etc. to the inspection. The first and foremost thing for any design which is for functional safety is to find out what is the boundary in which we are going to work and how the system is interacting. Okay, so IEC 16615 and ISO 26262 are the two standards which need to be looked at. So this standard gives you clear definition of SIL rating, right? What is the safety integrated level which need to be met at? So whether it is D, which is most advanced, or which is QM, quality management, wherein we don't expect that failure to result into severe condition. So based on that, basically ASIL rating is decided. ASIL is for automotive on, let's say, passenger car vehicle. And since India two-wheeler is predominant, we should also be aware about MSIL rating. Okay, so MSIL is motor and A is automotive. So there is some change in the rating, which is, let's say, this is a generic statement, but let's say ASIL D, ASIL C of automotive, ASIL C is can be correlated to MSIL D. Okay, so you will find a lot of literature on the internet on this, so you should be able to see. So, okay, what we do. So most of the cases ASIL-C is required for BMS. Okay. Um, what it does, ASIL-C is mean time between failure, or let's say failure in time, fit rate is below 1 fit. Basically, mean time between failure will be 1 billion hours. Now, this happens at system level, hardware level, and software. So at three different level, we need to keep on looking at what is the potential failure mode, how can we diagnose that, how can we eliminate that. So normally, uh, for example, what we can do is add self-test, right? So if the sensor is not able to measure, it need to report, right? If let's say if not able to measure, can we include redundancy in the system so that if let's say one sensor fails, other can start reporting. So in case of passenger car SLC BMS, you might see two current sensor. One could be Hall effect, one could be shunt, or one could be CAN. So if one of them fails, other will continue to function. Okay. However, at any case, if you are trying to add redundancy or self-testing, it is going to impact the hardware costs over all the part what we produce, and it's going to impact the software. Okay. Uh, SLC BMS development program can go be anything between 2 years to 4 years. In terms of man year, it could be roughly 10 to 15 man years of work what it goes. Okay, so how we have achieved? So two of our BMS are going close to that, while we have one BMS which we call it as a N3 BMS, not NBMS, which is ASIL compliant. Okay, there are different ways in which we ensure that there is no single point failure. What it means is because of the single failure in any part of the BMS, the BMS will not stop function. Right? There are different ways in which we have done this. Okay, maybe with available time it may not be possible right now, but this is something need to be looked at. Let's look at a typical architecture of the BMS. I think I'll take next 5 minutes to close. So in case of any BMS, I'm saying control part. So I'm not looking at the power distribution unit or switching elements. So there will be a cell monitoring ASIC. There will be a power supply to the from the battery or stock battery. Then microcontroller, inputs or input outputs, real-time clock, so that BMS keep on monitoring what happens over the time. So this is a generic architecture of any BMS. Now let's look at a sample specification. Okay, so any BMS, you should look at these things, right? So how many cells it can monitor, what is the minimum limit, what is the maximum limit, what is the cell voltage range it can handle, measurement accuracy, sampling rate, how many temperature sensor it can handle, accuracy, communication, overall dimension, what kind of balancing it has, what balancing current if it's a passive, what kind of IO is available. Okay. In terms of system specification, what is the maximum pack capacity it can handle, what kind of current it can handle, whether with onboard elements or external element, what's the measurement accuracy on the packs level, sampling rate, current temperature range, let's say ambient condition in which it can operate, what kind of current measurement it offers. And the last is test certification. So what standard it meets, right? So all this put together, a BMS specification can be arrived. So whenever if you're talking to any BMS manufacturer, you should um, ask for these elements, right? Finally, coming to lithium balance India journey so far, so what we have done in past. So we work with Device Electronics. So Device is our distributor. So more than 40 plus, I believe it could be even more. Unique applications we have supplied BMS in India. It's a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, passenger car for hybrid application, bus, off-road and energy storage. And we have given battery pack up to 80 kilowatt hour and 330 volt. We will be supplying to a large or conventional OEM for a 48 volt BMS. and we will be supplying to an off-road equipment manufacturer from next year. And apart from that, since Lithium Balance is part of Sensata, Sensata is US based large tier one, which is present in India from 2010. And we also support gigawatt contactors, which are our portfolio. We also support sensor, temperature, pressure sensors, gas pressure sensor. So this is what we can support apart from BMS. Thank you. So I'm now open for questions.
Chaitanya, thanks a lot for the detailed walkthrough. I think we have not had such a deep dive into the BMS previously on Gyanki Tech Talks. So thanks a lot for sharing in depth on the BMS. The first question kind of leads into that. You mentioned about a lot of features of the BMS. What is the most challenging aspect of a BMS design?
See, it depends on end application, right? For a two-wheeler, it could be how do we package everything on the available space could be challenge. For a passenger car, how do we put accurate estimation is a challenge, or how do we diagnose is a challenge. So it will vary based on the end application, what is available with us. Let's say if you come to Lithium Balance, we already have a BMS which is functional safety compliant, right? So we may not have issue to get into that stage. So it all depends on the what is available with us to start. OK, but if somebody is starting from scratch, right? So I would say biggest challenge for anyone is how do we get that level of data to ensure that our algorithms are correct and functioning to the best possible extent. OK, so hardware, I would say it is more and more getting into standard phase. Now software is getting predominance over hardware. OK, but that's my opinion. I mean, it could be different for other person.
Now, when we talk about cells, there is a lot of chemistries, different chemistries, LFP, NCA, NCM.
Right.
What portion of the BMS is dependent on the chemistry? And also, you know, there is talk about aluminum air and so many other new things as well.
Right.
So what is the dependency on the BMS?
I would say 100%. Every parameter in the BMS has to link with the cell at some point of time. If BMS is expected to handle the cell into safe operating zone, so it need to know what is the minimum voltage, maximum voltage it can operate, what is the current it can draw continuously, instantaneously, right? What is the temperature in which it need to operate. This is one part. Second is it need to know how cell behave over entire range. So it could be open circuit voltage or how that behaves. Then other thing is how cell behaves at different operating condition, right? Because these things are really essential to understand what point BMS should disconnect the battery pack or connect the battery pack, what point it should start balancing, it should stop balancing. So any BMS you take, I would say it should start with the what kind of cells we are using. However, it is impossible that you get a BMS only for LFP and then you can't use it for anything. So what we have done or some other manufacturers have done is they have allowed user to configure the cell pack and cell data in the BMS so that BMS can be used for different applications. So any cell, right, it should have an open circuit voltage. It should have a capacity to, or let's say, aging characteristics. It should have a different characteristics at different SOC conditions, right? So if we combine that, it is certainly possible to have BMS which can work for majority of the cell chemistries. Okay, even newer elements, obviously it should have minimum capacity, maximum capacity. The cell behavior can be captured in terms of voltage, current, or some other physical phenomena. So if we are able to capture that, then that can fed into BMS and we can ensure that this BMS can be operated for different chemistries. There could be some change required in the hardware and software, but still, yes, uh, by and large, yes, technically it is possible to produce a BMS which can handle all the chemistries.
Okay. Now, when looking from a OEM's perspective, there are quite a few people in the audience who are working with two-wheeler companies and getting into making electric two-wheelers. How should they go about selection of the BMS board? Like, what would be the critical parameters that they should be looking at in the selection of the BMS?
Okay, I would say best start point is to understand their end application, right? So within two-wheeler, right, there are different duty cycle in which it will be. So a vehicle which is operated by or used by individual like me, the usage pattern is entirely different than what being used by delivery person or different applications. So it need to be understood. Second is what is exactly required, right? Uh, do we really bother about what kind of balancing is in the BMS, or what we look at is can BMS ensure that if the cell life cycle is 3,000 cycle, it should meet that 3,000 cycle. So we need to really understand what is exactly required from the battery pack and then drill down to BMS requirement. Okay. Other thing is each person who is looking at BMS need to really understand what is the volume required and what that volume basically justifies the uh, let's say development effort, right? Obviously, technically, it is possible to develop BMS for each and every application, but as I mentioned, it's a commercial decision to make a new spin or not. Okay, but by and large, my suggestion to anyone who is looking at BMS is first of all, they need to look at what is their end application and then drill down requirement to the battery pack level. And then as a BMS manufacturer, we are happy to support you on the requirement. But if somebody insists me that we need a active balancing, then I mean, most of the manufacturers will be limited. So my suggestion will be let's drill on requirement to the pack level and then start working with the BMS manufacturer. But keep factoring that the cell chemistry is going to change over time. It's going to evolve over time. So you should have BMS which is able to handle that over time. Okay, so this is my suggestion here.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. So we'll go into some audience questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, there is a question from Indranil. Indranil, would you like to ask your question to Chaitanya? Okay, I think Indranil may not be on audio. I'll
Yeah.
ask him. So for SOC determination, the denominator, which is the maximum charge capacity, that depends on the battery temperature, right? Uh, Less the temperature, less is the capacity. Even at high temperature, the capacity may be reduced. So, does the algorithm take that into account, the temperature dependency?
It should take into account. Okay, because as I mentioned, at let's say 25 degrees C or plus minus 5 degrees C, the BMS, the cells will be operating at its best capacity. While if we go on increasing the temperature, reducing the temperature, there is definite change in the capacity of the cell. So if let's say a cell is of 10 Ah, it is able to draw 10 Ah at 25 degrees C. But when we go at 45 degrees C and we start discharging at 10 ampere, the reduction in the capacity will be significant and it might lead it to deep discharge or degeneration stage at some point of time. So BMS must understand what is the impact of temperature on the cell behavior and it should factor. Okay, so in case of lithium balance BMS, we allow temperature based SOC correction, temperature based uh, basically current limitation. Okay, so there are different ways in which we can do. So what we have done is our way. There could be an alternate way to do this.
Okay. There's a question from PGPR. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hello, Mr. Chaitanya. I am Geet Prajwal from Aventos Energy.
Okay.
So I had two questions with respect to the role of the BMS. One is to do with deep discharge and how we can sustain against it. So one normal use case that we find is riders can always exhaust the battery. So even though we tell them don't do it, they can always try to cover the last mile, which kind of makes the SOC go to zero and eventually stop the vehicle. So first question here is, once the SOC hits 0%, obviously the BMS is going to cut off any further discharge from the battery for safety reasons. So in this scenario, how long can the rider refrain from charging the battery, from connecting a charger?
I'll take this question in a different way. So I'm assuming that you are allowing battery to discharge up to 0%, right? So in this case, obviously 0, if it goes to 0, it is actually almost on the verge of deep discharge. Ideally, our suggestion here will be operate battery pack between 10 to let's say 95 or 90%, right? At this point of time, let's say if it goes to 15 or 20%, it should start giving some work, right? And then at 10%, it should cut off. Okay. When it cut off, obviously, if there is an acceleration demand, it will try to open, right? Then we should also put limit on how many times it will try to retrieve the current discharge. Okay. So this is how it need to be handled ideally. You had could you repeat last part of your question?
Yes, I think let me rephrase the question a little bit as well. So what we do is we generally have a DOD of 85%. So what I refer to as 0% is the battery reaching something around 15% of its capacity. So like you were saying, the 0% is what we show to the rider, not what the battery did. So even in that circumstances, would the battery go into deep discharge?
See, if let's say if you allow it to go below, let's say in case below 15% and it touch 0, there is all likelihood that it will go into deep discharge. Okay, maybe cell manufacturers can suggest if it can be revived once, twice, or how many time it can be revived from deep discharge. But if it continues to draw power from the battery, yes, it is likely to go to deep discharge. Now, some assessment need to be done. Let's say if you are aware about Mahindra Reva, so they allowed revive capacity, and then the vehicle is allowed to operate certain kilometers. So that calibration need to be done. That if we go below 15% of the capacity, what is that is allowed to, let's say, go up to 5% or 10% of the capacity, and beyond that it will simply refuse to, or BMS simply should refuse to discharge any power. Okay, so that I think this is more of a development effort which you need to do, and obviously the coordination between the cell manufacturers is really important here. But in any way, you should have that 5 to 10% buffer, because when it goes to cell production, the quality may vary from cell to cell, right? So if we put 2%, then the 2% itself go into the production tolerance. So you should go beyond the production tolerance and operate.
Okay. So if we are not referring to SOC, I'm just leaving SOC aside. We are just
Right.
looking at the capacity in the battery. So I let from 100%, I let the BMS discharge up to 15% of the cell capacity. And then we do a hard cutoff. We say no more power is going to be drawn from the BMS. Let it be for BMS functioning or vehicle functioning or anything like that. In this scenario, can we give the rider maybe how long can we give the rider before he can charge the battery again?
No, that's good. So as I said, we see it all depends upon the cell characteristics.
Okay.
So this need to be worked out between BMS and I mean, it's basically work between work for three parties: BMS, cell manufacturers, and the vehicle manufacturers.
Thank you, sir.
Geet, also the parasitic loads or auxiliaries that you will still have, you have to estimate what is the current draw coming from them. Maybe at that stage, 48 hours without further charging may put the cells in a very bad state. So that estimate of the losses has to be undertaken.
Okay, got it.
Mr. Yashodan, you have a question?
Yes. Thanks, Chaitanya and Shekhar. Chaitanya, nice presentation. I have a small question. Like, while you are designing the BMS for last mile connectivity, where the kilometer or high speed is not that, that's the focus. Say low speed vehicle, and for high speed vehicle, say for the college guy or college girl, where you need a high acceleration, and for a housewife where acceleration is not that much, low speed vehicle, where you have a differentiation in BMS.
Ideally, BMS hardware and let's say base layer should not change. The application layer wherein we are actually modulating the current. So in our case, there's something called dynamic charge DCLI, DCLO, which is goes in and out, right? Wherein we allow discharge to happen at different capacity and different temperatures. If that are able to change, I think we should be able to do that. But technically speaking, I may not be the best person to answer. I will have to get my technical team to answer this. But yes, I don't expect any change on the hardware side and base software side. But application side, yes, there are changes required.
But that should then impact the cost, right? I mean, you can change some. Yeah. Okay.
See, if you are changing application layer, then it should change the develop. I mean, it should happen during development phase, not during, I mean, the production. So once we've developed, I mean, let's say, for example, CBMS from lithium balance. So it is being used in energy storage application as well, a two-wheeler application as well, and three-wheeler, right? So their customer is setting different limits, okay? And as per that, the BMS will function. So I don't expect hardware to change for every application unless we are looking at very high volume at each application.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Mr. Rakshit?
Yes. So, Mr. Chaitanya, thank you very much for a presentation on BMS. I had one question related to SOC estimation, especially with respect to the Coulomb counting method. So in order to get the accurate SOC, the BMS should also know some reference capacity which it already has, to which it will add or subtract the charges coming in and out. Correct?
Right.
So how does it identify the reference capacity, or how is it done?
So normally when we build a battery pack fresh, right? So there we need to put the capacity available in the pack. From that point, it will start the estimation. Obviously, it may be correct or may not be correct. The second thing is the data available in the processor, right? And we have a real-time clock. Right? So with this, it is able to understand what was my last configuration and it which beyond which it will start estimation. So normally BMS will store, most of the BMS will store their last configuration or last data point, and from which it will start estimation.
Okay, so even if the vehicle is switched off or turned off, that particular value will still be there with the BMS, to which it will take it as a reference.
It's called an
Okay.
idle mode. So it has to store. I mean, it's not
Okay,
only with BMS,
okay.
but with any controller in the vehicle, it need to store the last configuration or last position.
Okay, okay, understood. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Siddesh Gosavi.
Yes, so thank you so for the presentation. I just had one question regarding SOH estimation. So, are there any techniques or algorithms existing, like you told, for Coulomb counting and voltage based for SOC? Likewise, for SOH estimations, are there any standard algorithms?
See, we need to basically factor the aging. Okay, so I don't know much detail into how it actually done, but I'll try to give what I know, right? So one is, how do we factor cell aging is the most important factor to my knowledge when it goes to SOH estimation, right? So can it do through some external media like EIS methodology, or can we have a lot of cell data in past, so that based on the cell behavior, we are able to predict that the cell is going to, or cell is actually deteriorating over time. Okay, but I'll get back to you on this. I have no, I mean, I don't know at this point of time if there is a specific methodology to do this. Okay, I'll take this as an action point. I'll get back to Shekhar on this.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Last questions, Mr. Vilas. Vilas, we cannot hear you. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Yes. Hi, good morning, Shekhar and Chaitanya. My question is, once we go into deep discharge, or let's say the rider, the vehicle goes into deep discharge, what does it like? Can he charge it back again, or how does it work? Or does the manufacturer or of the battery has to do something to bring it back?
Yeah, so this is more from the cell manufacturer perspective, this question, but there is a possibility to revive the cell maybe few times. That all depends upon the cell manufacturers, but it is possible to some extent, but not always. So this question can better answered by cell manufacturer, who is basically expert into cell than beams. So based on the cell characteristics, we will basically control the incidence, but this is more related to the cell manufacturer. Sorry for this.
No problem. But
Shekhar, can I add
the right,
Yeah, I think yes. So we have an
the rider.
expert on this call, so Yashodhan may be able to answer here.
Yeah,
Vilas,
Yashodhan, please go ahead.
yeah, Vilas, just to add on that, this is Yashodhan. When it happens, the deep discharge means ions are moving from cathode to anode, and anode there are holes. So the ions are sitting there on lithium. Lithium ions are sitting and coming back. So when cell manufacturer develop any process, it can keep the reserve capacity basically. As you mentioned in the question, like when phone goes to a zero deep discharge and again we start, then there the energy get to the anode side and the lithium ions are getting back to cathode, and then you can get the energy on the cell level. It happens, and whole every time the cell supplier keep reserve capacity than actual capacity what is mentioned in the cell. So I hope it can give you answer.
So Vilas,
Thanks.
a cell phone never goes to zero. Never ever goes to zero. So when it shows us a zero, it is actually at 20%, if not higher. And at that, it can survive like months and months of cutoff time. So even if you recharge it after 6 months, there should not be any issue because it does not have any static losses. It's a single cell type of architecture. But when you have a battery pack for a two-wheeler, you have multiple cells, and these cells will, interact with each other when they are shut down, and that causes latent current flow between them, and leads to the losses and depletion even when you are in an idle situation.
Thanks, Shekhar and Yashodhan and Chaitanya. Just a very quick follow-up. The rider cannot charge and bring the battery out of deep discharge. Is that true?
I would say not always.
Okay.
I mean, there could be some instances it could be possible, but if that happens multiple times, as Yashodhan mentioned, so then it may not be possible.
So, Vilas, it would not be safe for him to do it, for the driver to do it.
Yeah.
That is the thought, because the current has to be very carefully modulated in order to revive. Even doing it at a pack level may not be the right thing. You may have to go to the cell level and do it.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, thanks. I know we can keep going, and we have already overshoot our time. So, Chaitanya, any parting words from you? And
I think, I'm really happy to be here and share what I know. Obviously, there are something which I don't know, so I'll definitely get back to you. And thanks everyone for the questions and patiently hearing me. And thanks Shekhar and Ganigi team for this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Chaitanya.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.